should gambling be so evident, I guess, in the world of football and sports generally like that?
Well, it's obviously very tough to listen to James's story there, and my heart goes out to people who are struggling with gambling and any form of addiction like that, and I'm convinced it can absolutely destroy people's lives. But at the same time, to look at the statistics that James was quoting there about 1 in 4 people having a serious problem or being harmed by gambling, 3 in 4 people are not, and 3 in 4 people are enjoying the odd flutter every now and again, and for 3 in 4 people it's not out of hand. And I do think sometimes we run the risk of infantilizing society a little bit by by banning adverts, by taking away some of the freedom of choice that people have just to enjoy life as adults. And clearly we need to draw a distinction between children and adults in this context, and I wouldn't want to see advertising gambling in a way that children could access. But as adults, I think we should be allowed to see adverts for gambling. We should be allowed to enjoy a flutter every now and again. There needs to be help and support for people who have a problem with this, but at the same time we can't infantilize everyone in society.
Interesting, and I think James touched on it as well there. You know, these big gambling organisations, they know that there's many people that have addictions to their products and their services. They know this, and they're also very clever in some cases in terms of how they incentivise people to come in and free bets and all the rest of it. And I personally do think that those industries should be doing more. So James was mentioning then that at the moment they're asked to give a percentage of their profits to fund treatments. But to me that doesn't go far enough. If you're creating a product, and let's be honest, you're making an absolute fortune from doing so, but you know that there is whether it's a small percentage or not, there is a percentage of people whose lives are significantly impacted. And as James alluded to then, when you've got an addiction, not just gambling, but any addiction, it's not just the person that's addicted that suffers, it's the whole family around. The whole support system often gets impacted by these addictions. So these companies, in my mind, they do have a much greater responsibility to protect people, those people that suffer, from the adverse implications of their products.
I mean, you can say the same about alcohol and about cigarettes and some forms of drug addiction, well, all forms of drug addiction as well, although obviously that's not legal and not something that's being advertised. But I think money comes out from taxes as well, which goes into the NHS, which is another form of help and support for people. But yeah, I absolutely agree that there needs to be support in place for people who do have a problem with this. I guess I'm just not convinced that this is completely an issue to do with advertising. I think the advertisers might be fighting over that small group of people who are already inclined to engage in gambling rather than actively recruiting new gamblers, let's say.
Do you think it's a bit nanny state to start
that's my concern.
Is that what you're getting to?
That's definitely my concern, that once we go down that line, you know, of banning things that might be harmful, well, we already see it's extending into junk food advertising. But I mean, where do you draw the line? And there are people and businesses that are dependent upon the money from advertising. And I think once we start knocking out so many different things from being advertised, then we do need to ask, where will the revenue come from to replace the money that's generated from advertising in this way?
Yeah, I mean, see, it's interesting because you mentioned junk food as well. See, I'm a massive advocate of personal responsibility. That is something that absolutely runs through my veins. I think that you've got personal responsibility ultimately for your own life. But then I do think that if you're someone who, you know, we've just been mentioning there, has got an addictive personality or is susceptible to addictions, and addictions, they're often regarded as an illness. There's a difference between someone that's actually genuinely having a life-affecting addiction to someone that's kind of okay. And then when I hear about stuff like, you know, like junk food advertising or advertising this or advertising that, it makes me slightly uncomfortable, because what I think then is you've got commercial organisations that are almost deliberately in some ways profiteering off that person's condition.
So, well, this is absolutely true. When you hear about some people who have shopping addiction, for example, in which case you'd stop all advertising. I guess my argument is not that I don't deny that there are some people who have particular problems, but my concern is that we treat everybody, we treat all of us as if we have some problems when luckily most people in society don't, and most people are able to take responsibility for their own actions. So when you institute a ban, an across-the-board ban, then you're actually treating all of us as if we have an addiction or a problem, and that's just not the case.
Interesting. Well, let me know what you think at Michelle Dewes or at GB News, or you can email dubes@gbnews.uk.